Welcome to another BOOKMAS video. Today I'm going to be recommending to you guys my favorite wintertime, holiday, Christmas reads, all of the above, all of the great reads to get you kind of in the mood for this upcoming winter season. Like always when I do these types of videos, I do like to recommend a couple in different genres. So we have some romance, we have fantasy, historical fiction, even thrillers. Because I know not everyone reads the same genre, I myself like to branch out into different ones, so I made sure to grab a couple from each genre. Before we go any further, subscribe if you want to follow along on my BOOKMAS videos this year. I have tons of more ideas and fun content to create later in the month. Now let's just dive right in. So we're gonna start off with kind of the wintertime, Christmas, holiday reads specifically, and I will say most of these, if not all of these, are all romance as well, so it's kind of like a 2-for-1. First one being The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. I read this one last winter and I really enjoyed it. This is about a single dad named Noah, and he meets this kind of like reality TV star who is a house redecorator. Her name is Catalina King. She's not just a redecorator though, she's like has her own reality TV show. Just think HTV, Fixer Uppers, but girl version Catalina King. So that's her name, and they meet. Noah unfortunately lives in this little town in Connecticut which was hit really hard by a hurricane, and they kind of start out as enemies. It's enemies to lovers, and they get to know each other, but I just remember the tension being really good, the spice being a great level. Like it wasn't too much to overshadow their actual romance, and it was just enough to give you kind of that little bit of holiday spice. At first too, Noah, our male main character, is not very happy with this female main character, Catalina King, coming into his town and trying to like capitalize on it in a sense, but that really isn't her motive, and as you read onto it, you find out more about what drives her and why she does what she does and why she just wants to help Noah and his town. Also, the cover is just so beautiful. Lucy Score is a really great author as well. I do like her book, so this one did not disappoint. Next up is one called The Santa Suit by Mary Kay Andrews. It's really short and sweet, which is nice. It's literally like teeny tiny, so if you just want to get in a quick holiday read, this is like barely 200 pages. It's about a woman named Ivy. She moves into this sort of like cozy cottage in a new town, and in her attic or somewhere in a closet she finds like this Santa suit, and in it there's a little note from a little girl wishing for her dad to return home from the war. So she kind of goes on this path to try to find out who this suit belonged to, who wrote the note, did the dad come back. So it's kind of a little bit of a mystery in a sense, but also very heavy on romance, small town romance. It's very cozy, gives the perfect comfort vibes. I definitely recommend, again, especially if you're looking for something that's really quick, very short, this will be the perfect book for you. Next up is actually one of my favorite holiday, or yeah, it's more of a wintertime read, and it is One Day in December by Josie Silver. This book actually was my first introduction to Josie Silver as an author. Since then, I think I read like her entire backlog because I love this book that much. I don't think in the moment I rated it a 5-star, but looking back, it definitely is a 5-star for me. I always think about it. I definitely want to reread it one day, if not soon. This is also a Reese's Book Club pick, so if you are a fan of that book club, this is a great read for that purpose. But this is about a woman named Lori, and she basically, it takes place in London, so think snow, London, cold, very atmospheric setting. But Lori is on literally the red double-decker buses, and she looks out and sees this guy sitting on a bench. They make eye contact. It's basically insta-love, which is sometimes hard to buy, but that's just the very tip of the iceberg with this book. Like that's not really what it is about at all. So they kind of see each other, but she like leaves on this bus, so like she kind of tries to find who this guy is because she like had a connection with him. And then we get a little bit of a plot twist when her best friend Sarah brings this new guy over for a Christmas party, and it ends up being Jack, who is the guy that Lori saw at the bus stop. So it kind of goes into friendship, heartbreak, grief. Like there's so many topics and themes that are discussed in this book. That's why I say that the insta love is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to this book, but if that premise is just the least bit interesting, I think you guys will really enjoy this. I know I did. There was just something so gripping about this book. It's heavy on womanhood, heavy on friendship, heavy on a freaking sticky situation and what to do if that ever happens to you, because it is a pretty sticky situation. I just have really fond memories of reading this book, and I really enjoyed it at the time. Next up, and I think this is the last one for this category, this one's mostly romance, and Let me just show you what it is. It's Icebreaker by Hannah Gray. So basically a romance. It is a little bit of a wintertime read. Now this one, like I mentioned, is definitely a romance. It's a college romance, very spicy. This is probably the spiciest one of the ones that I recommended. Regardless, I still think it was really, really good. It was well done. This is Anastasia and this is Nate. So she's an ice skater and he is a hockey player at the same school, but they're kind of rivals because they share the same ice rink. Something happens to Anastasia ice skating rink that makes her have to practice at Nate's ice skating rink, and he's like the captain of the hockey team. So there's obviously these tensions, but I really enjoy the found family aspect of this book because we get to meet kind of different characters from the hockey team. We get to meet some of Anastasia's like friends. Like, I just really enjoyed that aspect. I love when it becomes, you know, a found family type trope in a book. And lucky for you, if you do enjoy this book, it is a series. It's kind of an interconnected series. It's not super like you have to read the other ones, but I definitely recommend it. The one after this one is called Wildfire, which is a great summertime rec. But definitely, if you want to dip your toe into this series and get started, I definitely recommend it during this cold season. Okay, next genre is going to be more of our thriller mystery recommendations. So the first one I'm going to recommend is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Now the reason I'm recommending this one in this time period is because literally the first 3 pages will immerse you into a winter wonderland. It's basically, I think they're traveling, it's a husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Wright, and I believe they're traveling in Scotland or somewhere. Yeah, a weekend away. They win a weekend away in Scotland in this house, and so they're traveling there and their car gets stuck because it's literally so much snow, and so they're like basically stuck in this house and they have to figure out like what's going on. There's tons of secrets. What I remember most about this thriller or this book in general was that there was a lot of puzzle-like mysteries, so you really kind of have to put things together. I remember flipping back through the pages trying to remember like who said this, who said what did this mean. So if you like those types of kind of complex but still fairly easy to follow thrillers, then you'll definitely enjoy this one. There were tons of plot twists that I did not see coming that I was pretty surprised about, and overall I did enjoy it, and I do think it is a great book, especially for the winter time. I mean, just look at the cover. It speaks for itself. The next book I actually do not own, but I read it last winter as well, and it is The Sanatorium, and it is also a Reese's Book Club pick. So again, common theme here because I do love that book club. But anyway, this one takes place in like a remote high scale hotel in like the Swiss Alps or something crazy like that. Like you can only get there through like a ski lift or a gondola ride. That's like, I don't know, like it paints a picture of a beautiful winter wonderland. Again, mostly recommending these thriller mysteries because they take place in settings like this. In this book specifically, the setting is a character all on its own. I just remember wanting to go to this place, even though, like I mentioned, it is a thriller mystery, so there is some sketchy stuff going on. There's a huge mystery. This book in general is kind of more of a murder mystery, whodunit type of thriller mystery. Even though that is the main topic of this book, I still really wanted to go to this like hotel because of the setting itself. Now, it's really interesting because I believe it was a psychiatric hospital turned hotel, so it has a history. The setting where this book takes place has a history. It is a character all on its own. I also just really enjoyed this thriller mystery. I think this is probably one of my favorites in the whole Reese's Book Club like thriller mystery selection. So if you are interested at all, I do recommend it. It's had a lot of secrets and you don't know who to trust, and you honestly suspect everyone at a certain point. Moving on to our next genre, it is going to be historical fiction. The first one that I want to talk about is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. This was a 5-star read for me, so of course I have to recommend it. It is by Gabrielle Zevin, who is a very well-known author nowadays, but this book specifically is about a grumpy old bookstore owner. His name is A.J. Fikry, and his life basically takes a ton of unanticipated turns where you literally are like, what the heck? Like, what would I do if this happened to me? So he has to deal with a lot. He goes through a lot, but even though that's kind of the main topic of this book, I found it to be very comforting, very cozy, and very nostalgic in a sense. I think it's just mostly Gabrielle Zevin's writing that made it so it felt super comfortable, even though there are topics in here like death, like tragic instances, grief, stuff like that that are very heavy. It still felt light in a sense, and it still just felt like symbolism for life in general. The reason I'm recommending this time of year, I think mostly, is because there are some heavier topics talked about, but regardless, like I mentioned, it is still more of a cozy and comfortable nostalgic type book that just, I don't know, those are the three like main words that I think of when I think of this book. And so I think for the wintertime, those are the types of books I tend to kind of lean towards. So maybe you will too. If you do, then maybe you'll find this one interesting. It honestly doesn't really take place in the wintertime, but like I mentioned, it's mostly the vibes that the book brings. And those are the reasons that I'm recommending this one. Actually, I'm so dumb. This isn't historical fiction. This is just fiction, I think. I don't think it takes place definitely like within the last few years. So scratch that. This is going to be a fiction pick, which is cool because it just gives us another genre. Yeah, this is not historical fiction, but the next one is. Okay, next book I'm recommending, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I'm sure you guys have read this book, and if you haven't, you've definitely heard of it because it is super popular. 5-star read for me. It was so good. One of Kristen Hanna's best, if not the best. For me, I think I like a different book better, but this one was still, regardless, really, really good. In general, I think any Kristen Hanna book is a great book to pick up during this time because they are usually books that deal with more heavy emotional topics. So again, just because of the time of year, those are the ones that I tend to strive for. This one specifically, it's about World War II, before, during, and after, ramifications. Huge topic in this book is sisterhood and womanhood in general. Courageous, brave women doing stuff. Like, I wanted to say a different word, but they're doing stuff. They're getting it done. It's very, very heavy. It's pretty sad, but it's also just so inspiring and eye-opening. And it just left me in awe, honestly, because its storytelling is beautiful. It is pretty long. It does not feel like that at all. Trust me. It honestly feels shorter than some 300-page books just because of the author herself. Kristen Hanna is phenomenal. The reason I'm recommending this one for this time of year is because it does take place in France, and there are some mentions of like, you know, winter and cold season. So of course that's why, but also the topics are pretty heavy. But I just think this is a great one to snuggle up with in front of the fireplace on a cold winter day when you just want to reflect and sit and read, but still feel like you're learning something. This is definitely one of those ones. I mean, you can always pick one of those like holiday romances that are a bit more fun and light, contemporary romance, like cozy feeling. This one is going to rip your heart out, but also stitch it back together and then crack it open a little bit more towards the end. Like, it was just very, very good, very well written. I will always be recommending this book. Last and final genre is going to be fantasy. Now, honestly, I am not the pro to be doing fantasy recommendations, but this goes for me and you. We should be picking up fantasy books in the winter time. I don't make the rules, but this is like the perfect time for a fantasy book. And I feel like all of them give those like cozy, cold weather night type vibe. But anyway, this one I have read. So it is going to be Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire series. If you have not read this, if it's ever interest you even a tiny bit, I definitely recommend picking it up in the wintertime because one of the main settings in this book takes place in a place called Winterfell, and that, just take a moment of silence for Winterfell because it is one of my favorite places on earth, fictional or not. But anyway, regardless, Winterfell is located in the north of this fantasy world, and it is the like northernmost city. So it's called Winterfell, and the winters, if you've guessed it or not, are really, really long, like years long. If that doesn't give winter, I don't know what does. The vibes are high, the families are great. Putting winter aside, this has everything. It is pretty graphic, and there are some like, I mean, it takes place in the medieval times. So obviously, you know, women are not the most respected people. With that being said, it is fictional. George R.R. Martin is a really great, talented artist. I mean, artist. I always say artist. Author. He's phenomenal in this book series. Game of Thrones, the first one, just sets up marvelous, marvelous fictional world that you cannot help but embed yourself into. It is just a whole other level, honestly. But I am recommending this one specifically because of Winterfell and because some of my favorite characters in this entire series reside in Winterfell. So we do get a lot of it. We do get to experience it. There's also a location called the Wall, which is literally just an ice wall. In a land where summers can last decades and winters a lifetime, trouble is brewing. The cold is returning, and in the frozen waste to the north of Winterfell, sinister and supernatural forces are massing beyond the kingdom's protective wall. This is a great time to pick this book up if you've ever even had an inkling of interest in it. Perfect timing. I love this book. I'm on the third book in the series, I believe. A Storm of Swords, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if you've ever seen the show, it's phenomenal. So anyway, those are my wintertime holiday recs. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for me, please leave them down below because I do love to see what other books are out there that I might be interested in. But for now, that is all for this Bookmas video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!